You're listening in on an animated discussion about Batman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from thecinematropolis.com. And today's topic is Season 2, Episode 2, A Bullet for Bullock. So Joshua, the listeners might have noticed that we skipped Season 2, Episode 1, the so-called Season 2 premiere sideshow, starring Killer Croc.
We did skip it, and I think it was the right choice because we've mentioned before, we don't cover every single episode. We cover the episodes that are particularly good or have a real angle that we feel like we should talk about, or even we have bent the rules for things like His Silicon Soul, which is not very good, but we had to talk about the first one, and it did the stuff from the first one that we liked better. But really, Sideshow is just, do we really care about Killer Croc's origin? Do I need pathos from Killer Croc? I don't. I personally don't.
Oh, no. Okay. Sorry about the moaning. Let's see. I just, I don't really care about Killer Croc.
I just don't care about Killer Croc.
I don't care. The other thing I want to raise is not only is this the second episode of Season 2, but it is also the second episode of not Batman the Animated Series, but The Adventures of Batman and Robin. But hold on, Joshua. The Adventures of Batman and Robin. But Robin's not in the first one. And he's not in the second one.
Or the second one. This is actually kind of interesting. We're going to talk about something even before the title card. This rebrand is, on one hand, inexplicable to me. And on the other hand, so obvious. Like, the hand that's obvious is Robin is your viewpoint character for children. You know, I mean,
right.
This has been this is why kid sidekicks are a breakthrough in superhero technology. It's the reason they're a good idea. Robin is the second best idea in superhero comics after Superman, the first best idea, who gets to be number one because we can't have them without him, right?
Correct.
Robin is the number two best idea in superheroes, and we've barely had him, and when we have had him, it's been pretty inconsistent, but we want to sell this thing to kids more, I think.
Yeah, so yes, from the business perspective of trying to market this towards kids, sure, The Adventures of Batman and Robin. But you would think, okay, with the rebranding, I would think you'd have a really strong out the gate show. Yeah, Robin's an epic sidekick.
Huge part of this new show. Part of this new show. Take on the show.
No,
he's not
even in here. He's not even in here. And my other thing is, you would think, okay, yeah, well, we've done over 60 Batman stories, and yes, Robin's in some of them. Let's make sure that Robin's like a permanent member of the... None of it. He's just...
No. And in fact, there's a little look into the future. When Robin is an every episode member of the team, we will actually be calling it the Batman and Superman Adventure Hour or something. I mean, it gets rebranded again.
Oh, yeah. It gets rebranded like 4 times because there's Batman the Animated Series.
Yes.
There's the Adventures of Batman and Robin. There's, the Batman-Superman crossover, whatever that was called. And then, of course, you have the New Adventures of Batman and Robin.
Circle around to even newer adventures. Now, I think that in these new credits...
They're cool credits.
They're cool. They're fine. They're not as good as the original credits. Nope. They're not as pure.
Nope.
The music is still very good and also in keeping, but it's not the same sound. It's not the same music. It's not the same song. And I think you actually see some of the problems that we're talking about in this new opening. It's a lot of Batman. It's a lot of Robin. Almost none of it is Batman and Robin together.
Yep.
And in fact, a large chunk of the stuff that is Robin is from 2 episodes. Not all of it, but most of it is from Robin's Reckoning.
Yes, Robin's Reckoning, and there's some of it from what was the Catwoman Shadow of the Bat. There's some of that in there too.
Yeah, no, definitely. Not all of it.
But you're right. It's pulling from
most of it is from 2 episodes.
Yes, from 2 episodes. Very Robin heavy.
They do a fantastic job cutting it together so it looks like they're kind of working together on a case from different angles or whatever. Like the cutting, the editing is masterful. But when you're already wondering why they bothered, since they didn't actually make any changes to the show, it's just weird and inexplicable. It's just a mess.
And no actual changes on the show.
Not really.
That's the weird thing. Like, it's a rebranding, but where you don't actually change anything, so you slap a different name on it. I don't know. It's weird. Very lazy.
So little change is made to the show that not only does Robin not appear in Batman and Robin Adventures, but the episode we're looking at, Bullet for Bullock, is very much back to our refrain of who is this show for?
I'm glad you brought that back up, Joshua, because after watching this, I have to say, who the bleep was this show for?
If we're renaming it Batman and Robin Adventures to appeal more to a younger audience, and then we give them Killer Croc and then this episode,
okay,
we're not doing a great job.
I don't want to show our hand a little too much, so just we'll get there. But this is not only is this not an episode for kids, this is an episode for an incredibly well-read, genre-savvy adult.
I think so. Yeah,
and I'm talking super genre-savvy.
Here, let's center this on the title card.
Yeah, title card.
Okay,
that's good. Which, by the way, love
it.
Love the title card.
So good. It's one of the best. I'm never going to rank these, but I will say this is one of the best because it does all the things that I want it to do. It's very much its own, it's got a thematic thing going on. The music is fantastic. Mm-hmm. We are shown exactly what this episode is about without giving anything away.
Right.
Because we spotlight Bullock.
He's spotlighted. He's running
terrified.
away. Terrified and running away.
He's just in the headlights. That car is trying to run him down. We can tell that. But that is the first attempt on his life that we see in the show. It gives away nothing. Nothing. That is amazing.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah, it is an excellent title card.
It is also, on this show that is exceptionally noir, the most noirist thing that we have had on this show that is exceptionally noir.
This episode is exceptionally noir. Everything from the way characters look, the way that they talk, the cadence, to the jazz music, which, by the way, this episode won a Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Music Direction and Composition.
It should have.
Specifically. Oh, no, it was incredible music.
But it's also so different than what we usually get in BTAS. Mm-hmm. It's all hard-boiled detective smoky saxophone.
Yes.
And it's amazing examples of that. But if you just looked at this episode, it doesn't fit. Even with the show that is so noir for being on after school. It's so weird.
It's so weird.
It's so weird.
Because the start of the episode is Bullock.
Yeah.
And he just, someone's out to get him. And he's going to learn he's going to figure out who it is. One of the suspects is named Vinny the Shark. Come on. The Batman, Batman says things he would not say in a normal episode just because it sounds more like a gumshoe or hard-boiled story.
Yeah. Yes.
It's crazy.
Yes. It's not wildly out of character, but it's also clear that they are molding Batman's dialogue to what they're doing with this episode.
Yes.
And it really is. We do follow Batman around for some of this investigation, but it's largely centered on Bullock. Mm-hmm. And by the way, we discover in this episode that Bullock is a shockingly nuanced and multi-layered character.
For the first time. It took him almost 70 episodes, but we got there. Let's talk.
I don't want to say I like him, but I really sympathize now.
I don't like him. I don't know if I sympathize with him. I understand him. Sympathize? No. I feel bad. He took a job in a place that kind of destroyed his soul. He calls Gotham a cesspool.
Well, hold on. Is it Gotham's fault, though?
No, it's always his fault.
Well,
the responsibility falls on him ultimately every time.
This is so fantastic. So for me, the inciting incident of this episode is not, in fact, the first murder attempt. The inciting episode is the point where Bullock, who has for nearly 70 episodes hated Batman, calls Batman for help. Okay?
Right.
That's great. It also shows us why Bullock doesn't like Batman, and in turn,
why Batman doesn't like
Bullock. Because there's a shallow reading of this where you're like, Batman, he's right. I think you're protesting too much. But Bullock doesn't like Batman because of how similar they are. Bullock thinks it's vitally important that no matter how many rules he breaks, no matter how many laws he bends, he's a cop. And the badge matters. It separates him from other people, even if he's not always the most honest cop. And you can tell where he's willing to draw that line, because when Batman asks, "Are you on the take?" Bullock loses it, but comes back with, "I just bend the rules. We're not so different, you and I." Now, flip that around. Batman says, "We're not the same." And again, that shallow reading is, you protest too much, Batman. You're very much the same. But the badge matters a lot to Batman, too. Batman is allowing himself to bend those rules because he's not a cop.
Well, no, exactly. We actually have talked about this at length before, because Batman is a servant to his own idea of justice. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't. He's a vigilante. He's above the law. And because we had an entire conversation
a couple
of them about how he did the right thing, or he did he followed justice. And I was like, but who's justice really?
Right. No, totally.
His justice that allows him to bend all the rules he sees is in the way, which is the same thing Bullock does. Really,
it is. The difference is Bullock purports himself as a person who supports the law, i.e., he has a badge, he's an actual cop. And Batman never does that. And that matters. And I think, if we want to do kind of a deep read on this, I think part of that matters to Batman because of who he holds up as his ultimate cop is Jim Gordon,
right?
Who does not bend the rules,
right?
Who has never been looked at by internal affairs, at least not while he was in Gotham. He definitely was while he was in Chicago, but that's a whole other conversation. So he considers Gordon the perfect cop, right? And Bullock is not that guy, right? Like Bullock gets results, but he's not a perfect cop. He bends the rules. And both of them hate the other one for
basically doing the same thing.
But it isn't the same, right? Context changes everything. Both of them have a point. And I also think that Bullock's dislike for Batman centers on Bullock's dislike for himself.
No, he has super low
Massive
self-esteem.
self-loathing.
Yeah, no, he hates himself. Well, and it was that moment when Montoya comes into his office and says, "Man, you look rough." And he's like, "You try working 15 years in this cesspool, see what it does to you." He really does not like himself.
He doesn't like himself.
Doesn't like his job.
But he blames the job and he blames Gotham. And I do think that there's probably a kernel there. Like if we wanted to do an origin of Bullock, there was a moment when he decided to bend the rule because that was the only way justice was going to get done in Gotham, but he hates himself for it.
Sure.
We see him mistreat himself in every aspect of his life. We already knew that he is like a guy who is overweight, but we know that that's not just his general build. We've seen him eat nothing but junk.
Yes.
On screen.
Right.
In this episode, we see him eat trash, like literal trash.
Mm-hmm.
He ate this pizza that had been laying out in his apartment for who knows how long.
His cockroach-ridden apartment.
He lives in squalor. He doesn't have to live in squalor. He could take his trash out. He chooses to live in squalor. He is punishing himself for the kind of policeman that he chose to be.
Right.
It's
deep,
fascinating.
Yeah, psychological read there. I like it. I like it a lot.
It's so
and
good.
because he hates himself, other people hate him too.
Absolutely. We see this crop up in the actual mystery itself. And it's kind of interesting that when Batman says, "Do you have any leads?" And he's like, "There's just hundreds. Like I put people away all the time," which is legit. But then when we eventually get to the end with the mystery, which, by the way, much like the Worry Men, a mystery that was actually, I didn't see it coming.
Oh, yeah.
The clues are there, by the way.
No. The outcome of his landlord being the guy who's out to get him, that's very clever. I liked it a lot.
And the writings on the wall, we'll talk about how good the clues are.
Oh, yeah.
But no, we're going after, criminals, bad guys. But
that would be the obvious choice. He's a cop. Who else?
He's a cop. Who else would it be? But it turns out to be his neighbor and landlord that just hates him that much. And Batman's parting words, I feel, are really emblematic of how Bullock sees himself.
It's pretty great. You've got enough problems of your own to deal with.
Right.
And then just leaves.
And the enough problems are just being himself.
Yep.
These are his choices. It's really, here he's been just the slovenly cop who hates Batman, which is a valuable character in Batman fiction. Mm-hmm. It's worth having that person, right? Especially in contrast to Gordon at this point. And now we find out there's actually a bunch of subtlety and nuance here. These men know what they're doing. These creators know what's up.
Yes.
It's very good.
Yeah, no, I think it's really clever. I think humanizing Bullock again after a long time is great. I love that they do it in this really tropey way. Because the way I look at it is I don't know if Harvey's necessarily the point of view character, but I feel like we're experiencing the story from his perspective largely, which is why I think it's
deep in his POV, except when we're not.
Yes.
But I know we're deep in his POV because I want to bring up one specific scene.
Oh, sure.
That I think will really illustrate how much when Harvey's on screen, we're seeing through his eyes. The first time he comes into his apartment and he sees a gunman.
Yes.
And then flips the light on and it's just his coat and a bunch of cockroaches making what looked like an arm. We are told so much about Bullock in that moment. Look at the squalor he lives in, but look at his mental state. He's ready to shoot a coat.
Yes.
Man. So I think except when we are obviously in Batman's point of view, we are deep in Harvey's point of view.
Well, I think
Which I think is also why it's so noir.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Like because that is a way for the storytellers to really put us in his headspace.
Yeah.
Everything's a hard-boiled crime. Yeah. As a detective, a seasoned detective like him, right? That would be the case. Like everything's like a noir story.
Yeah.
Especially when it's all about him.
That's one way to look at it, right? And also, he is one of the quintessential noir heroes at that point. Like the tarnished detective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if he ever had a heart of gold, he doesn't anymore. You know, kind of thing. So yeah, love that stuff.
So Joshua, I don't feel like I have a ton more to say about this episode, but here's a few things I want to point out. Going back to the dialogue, this line was uttered. Well, actually, this line was uttered in this episode. Timely for when we're recording this, by the way. Merry Christmas, Vinny, and a Happy New Year. Just call me Santa, and you're at the top of my naughty list. Like, what is that line?
It's very stylized.
Oh my gosh, it was so funny. I thought that was great. Also, again, who the F is this show for? They use the term crack house and rock crystal in this episode. I'm like, whoa, this would never in a million years happen today. Not a crack house. Like, this is PG-13 territory for film.
It really is.
For film. PG movies can't even say stuff like that live. Yeah, it's crazy that they got away with this.
On that score, like things that just shock me as for inclusion, not so much in the same way as a crack house, but again, that like, who were you trying to impress with this homage? There are two classic film actors.
Oh, yes?
That appear in this. I mean, their faces are so obvious. Like, and one of them even shares the name with his likeness. The landlord, Niven,
right,
is obviously based on David Niven. For the purposes of this show, most famously of the Pink Panther.
Yeah, yes, correct.
And Vinny the Shark is obviously Lee Marvin. There's no mistaking it. And this is not like Mask of the Phantasm where we got Abe Vigoda to play somebody, so we made him kind of look like an even older Abe Vigoda.
Right.
These people look like these classic film actors unmistakably. For what purpose? I can't imagine. It's cool. It's super cool.
Such a deep cut.
But I don't know what's doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, this has to be the animators and the writers just really entertaining themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to mention one more thing that's not really like germane to this story exactly, but I think is a really interesting point on a character that we have enjoyed throughout this run. Renee Montoya got a promotion.
She got a promotion off screen.
Which is fine.
Sure.
Because, and I think it does matter for this narrative because we needed Harvey to be able to talk to a peer, and that's not Jim Gordon, and it's not Batman. The only other person we've seen, the only other cop we've seen more than once on screen, I think, is Renee Montoya, but she was a patrolman, so she had to get a promotion to detective so he would have a peer to talk to. But I love that. I love the evolution of Montoya's character on this show. It's fantastic.
I love that it's a small thing that's like kind of off on the side. I mean, like, it'd be cool to get a spinoff show where it's all her on this journey, like we see the whole show from her perspective. I don't know. I like this kind of like
it would be cool.
I love that. Like, I do love that it's like a side. It's a little
eventually.
Side subplot, you know, for along the ways because we've seen her many times, and every time we see her, she's in a different position.
Yeah,
it's very cool, very awesome. So, Joshua, do you think this is an essential viewing for listeners?
Yes, it's so good. I mean, on its own merits, it's so good. It won an Emmy. It shows how versatile this show is. By going even harder in the paint for the weird noir aspects anyway, I would say, yes, this is a must-watch. What about yourself?
I wholeheartedly agree. Emmy winning. The sound, the music alone is incredible. You're not going to hear that you won't hear it in another episode. And yeah, the commitment. I feel like if I was teaching a college course and talking about noir, this would be a fun like extra credit assignment or something. I don't know. Like it's just so noir heavy and so rich in noir. I love it. I love it.
I mean, on a show that I would already have described that way.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It goes harder for that.
Hard.
And I feel in that way positions Bullock as that tarnished detective in a way that, again, maybe or maybe not doesn't make him sympathetic. That's a question, but it makes him understandable.
Yeah.
Putting him very firmly in that genre makes sense.
Yep.
He makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Joshua, as always, we close out our show with some alternate media recommendations. What would you recommend to the listeners who enjoyed A Bullet for Bullock?
Okay, I'm going to suggest a crime film.
Oh.
I am going to suggest a crime film that prominently stars Lee Marvin, who lent his likeness, whether he knew it or not, to Vinny the Shark. Point Blank.
Point Blank, that's a great one. I love
It
Point
is
Blank.
great.
Yes.
It is based on a Richard Stark novel called The Hunter. It's been made and remade multiple times. Those of you who have seen Mel Gibson in Payback,
Yeah.
it's basically the same story, more or less the same characters, but they all do very different stylistic things. And I love Lee Marvin, just that stomp down the hallway. This is an unstoppable force of nature criminal. Whatever else happens, if you're in his way, it's bad for you. I mean, it's very much quintessential Lee Marvin for me. And since he made a guest appearance, apparently,
Again, I don't think he knew about it.
if you don't know who Lee Marvin is, Point Blank is the way you should find out.
I think so. Great.
Caleb,
starting
what
point.
about yourself?
I was going with something a little more on the line. I kept thinking that the Gumshoe references ideas came. So I want to recommend 1971's Gumshoe. It's a good little story. Also features a somewhat beaten man who has
In a noir detective film?
I know. He's beaten down by the world, trying to find a way out. Now, I check it out. 1971's Gumshoe. I feel like all the other noir are relevant. I mean, Maltese
We've
Falcon.
talked about a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Like, we've suggested a bunch of them. I think, these are good choices that are specific to this episode in one way or another. That is so noir. We did a good job. High five.
High five.
Well, that about wraps up this animated discussion. Caleb, where can people go to continue the conversation with you?
Well, Joshua, you can always find me on Twitter talking about film, television, video games, and all sorts of other pop culture goodness at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. I'm also the editor-in-chief and film critic at the Cinematropolis, and we publish these in-depth essays on all types of different films, oftentimes including science fiction and superhero films, all the stuff you'd want to read about. And you can find all these articles at thecinematropolis.com. Joshua, what about you?
I'm also most active on Twitter, where you can find me easily enough at Joshua Unruh. And remember that an animated discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions.
So join us in our next animated discussion when we take a look at the highly anticipated Season 2, Episode 3, The Trial.
Until next time, we'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel.